All right, it is Friday night, and we are doing an evidence-based triathlete podcast. It is 6:05, but really we started the podcast about 15 minutes ago, but I
Exactly.
never hit record. So, and I could have caught some really good discussion between Ted and our guest tonight, Rick Simpson. Hey, Rick, how's it going?
Going good.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having you, or thanks for joining us. This is going to be a lot of fun, and Ted and Rick were having a really good conversation about body weight support, but we're not going to talk about that tonight. We are going to talk about swimming and swimming technique. And Rick has really taken a number of local swimmers under his arm and really worked with people on improving their swim technique, not only for swimming but for the sake of triathlon. And I think this is going to be a lot of fun to talk about swimming stroke in the context of what you're looking for, but then also how you help someone be a better triathlete by swimming. So, Rick, maybe we just start with people may not know some of your background in swimming and or triathlon. Do you want to give us a big picture view of your background?
Yeah, okay. I started swimming when I was 13 years old, swam competitively. We did not do really high mileage. Swam through high school, swam through college. I was I was never the fastest swimmer on any team I was on. In college, I was the second slowest freestyler who completed 4 years. The slowest guy is a former roommate of mine, Peter Lynn, who has, when he actually ended up being the head coach at Eastern Michigan, where we went to school.
Mhm.
And Peter got involved with Bob Bowman when he was at University of Michigan, and helped him when Michael Phelps and Allison, well, I forget her last name, but she won a gold medal in 200 free. And then there was who's the good triathlete swimmer?
Andy Potts.
Andy Potts. Andy Potts was there. So there were a number of key guys. Peter's out in San Diego right now, coaching a high-level team out there. But anyway, I got out of college and went down to Georgia and coached at a private school down there. We had a kid who made prep school All-American. We had a 3:17 relay, which was like a lot of small colleges at that time didn't go 3:17 in the 400 free relay.
Mhm.
And so they had some real talented people there. Got away from that, worked with my dad for about 10 years and went back to medical school, residency, that's another 8 years. Then worked as a physician, radiologist, and then about 2000, I did some cross-country skiing. About 2000, I picked up some road cycling. Deal with that was when we were in a race one time, and we were going. We would climb up to like a plateau area, and then when you would come down from that, and me and I think it was Matt Grievers. No. Anyway, Gretzinger, and I were leapfrogging one another going downhill, and which would mean I would draft up behind him and then cut out and go around him and then pull in front of him. And then he would draft up to me and then pull around me and go in front of me. Well, the year before I'd gone downhill, my wife was behind me and we were going 50 miles an hour. Well, we had to be going over 55 miles an hour going downhill, at least, because we were, accelerating each other with the speed. And after that, I asked myself, what if a deer walked in the road?
Mhm.
That scared me a little bit. So I tended to get away from that, got into triathlon. me personally, I was never that great of an athlete as a swimmer, but in triathlon, I'm a star because I've got a swimming background, but I coached swimming, and not being a great swimmer was actually an advantage to a point, because I had to learn the things along the way that would make me improve, and then I could apply those with other people. Well, around 2000, let's see, I think 2006 was my first Ironman, something like that. Anyway, I retired when I came here, which was about 10 years ago. I go ahead and help people in swimming. I'd like us to become, Las Vegas to become well known as, if you're a triathlete and you want to be, you want to improve your swimming, which just about 95% of triathletes out there want to make their swimming better. You would rather live in Las Vegas because there's so many people who know so much about swimming. That's where I would like to go. So that's me.
Okay, awesome. So let's break this down. So when we swim as triathletes, there's always this balance that has to occur between fitness and technique.
Okay.
And, I've listened to lots of podcasts and watched lots of videos, and some people say, oh, it's all about fitness. And then you see other people, well, fitness doesn't matter if your technique is poor.
Okay.
So can you break those things down for us
Okay.
As a triathlon swimming guru?
The three things that will make you faster in swimming are position, propulsion, and power, the 3 Ps.
Yep.
Now, position means is that you have your body up on top of the surface of the water. You're sliding through the water. You want your heels, hips, head to break the surface of the water, to be able to break the surface of the water. The hips break the surface as you twist one way, one hip goes up, and then as you twist the other way, the other hip goes up, and they just break the water. And it's just the yarmulke head. It's not like the whole head. It's just the top of the head breaking the surface of water. And that's the way the fast swimmers swim. If you are, and by that I mean Olympic swimmers, if you're a triathlete, most triathletes, the position and having that heels, hips, head, and sliding through the water is the most important thing. You can improve your, if you have a bad position and you can improve it to a good position, you can cut seconds off of your 100-yard time, 100-yard repeat time. And we've had situations where we've been, where I've been working with somebody. Finally, we get them up on top of that water, and then they, all of a sudden their time just drops. And however, if you watched, like the other day, I was in the morning and watched BCH, Boulder City Henderson, the local swim team at Multigen. Those guys are all flat on top of the water. I mean, they're all right there. They're just completely parallel with the surface. Well, if you talk about position with them, there's just not much there to improve.
Right. And
so the solution, and what all the swim teams do, is they train it. They get the power, and they get the propulsion where they're grabbing. And most of the swimmers are doing this already, where they're using their hand and their forearm to pull in freestyle or whatever stroke. They're using their forearm as part of a propulsive service to get them moving, which is the second thing that the triathlete needs to work on. Most of the competitive swimmers already have that, so they only have one other thing to work on, and that is their power. Now you can, you lift weights, and you do tons and tons of swimming for a 12-year-old to go 5,000 to 7,000 yards a night, 5 nights a week. That's not unusual. There's there's a lot of triathletes who don't do that in their longest workout. But these kids are doing this all the time because that's their own. That's really the only thing that's left.
Right.
that's not to say that they're perfect, but they're so much closer to perfect that that it's easier to gain the power than it is to get those additional small refinements. And they're still working on those, you know. I mean, I tell people that all the good swimmer, you know, Michael Phelps when he was swimming, Katie Ledecky when she swims, you know, these people are checking their technique every day because, you know, we're born to run, but we learn to swim. And there has been an evolution of what technique looks like over the years because we keep looking at these fast swimmers and we start seeing some differences, and these guys are going faster and faster and faster. So I guess the quick answer to you for most swimmers, the first thing that I work on with most people is alignment on top of the water. Now, there are some people who are good floaters and you can go past that real quick. Particularly women, they carry more fat than men, which floats. They carry it in the right places, you know, in their hips in order to help them float. So, you know, that's some women are real good floaters and you can move past that positional thing pretty quickly. Others are not, and that's a real struggle.
So let me break in just really quickly here. So that being said, I agree with you. Many the triathletes that I've worked with and seen, that's their major issue, is getting their hips and heels and head in alignment and that position. So
Yes.
what cues do you find that work the best for helping with that? You know, what's something practical that we could take away?
Probably the most practical thing that you take away is that you can feel your feet up at the top of the water when you kick.
Yeah.
Your hips are more problematic. Now, in January and February, when you're swimming in the morning and it's 50 degrees out, and especially if you're female and you've got the style now in female is to have the high cut suits on the leg, high cut on the side. So when they roll to the side, they can sometimes feel that cold air versus the warmer water they're in. They can sometimes feel that on their hip. Our suits aren't like that. Most of the time, we're not going to feel that, but we can feel our feet at the top of the water. That'll get you a lot closer.
That's a good first cue for people.
Yes.
And then what about the other side with the head side? Because it seems like, to me, there seems to be this like teeter-totter or seesaw type thing with the head and the feet.
Probably people tend to look too much at the wall that they're going towards. You know, the Branton Ford has a swimming company, Effortless Swimming, and he is out of Australia, and he puts out a lot of videos, and he talks about looking either straight down to up to a 45-degree angle, but no higher. But that's the range that really good swimmers will look in. If you look directly at the wall, you know, which is a tendency, if you look directly at the wall, what ends up happening is that you end up picking your head up a little bit more, and of course then your hips and your legs drop.
I know that when, you know, historically with me, what I would do is I'd keep my head looking down, but then when I breathe, I would look up and then turn instead of just turning. It's something that I've had to really work on.
Right, and you know, that brings up another point is that your body will learn things over time, even though you don't tell it.
Right.
In other words, it's like running. You'll go out and you'll run, and you'll be running really sloppy. But the more you run, the more your body will figure out how to be efficient.
Yep.
And it's the same thing with swimming. The more you swim, the more your body will figure out how to be efficient. Now, we're born to run and learn to swim, so, we need to be plugging in things, there in swimming to help that along, to guide somebody in getting the right feeling, into getting in the right position. But well, I was talking to somebody today, and I was saying that, I hadn't seen him swim in a while, and I said, your swimming has improved, but you need to do a whole bunch in order to smooth things out, because you're a bit stiff when you do it.
Yep.
So, and that's common, at first things are stiff, and then you learn how to, then your body learns how to make things smooth.
Mechanical efficiency.
Yes.
So
oh,
John, actually, I was going to bring John in on this one. So John, I'm going to ask you a question, because when we've talked about swimming biomechanics many times, and you always come up with there's basically two things here, right? So what are those two things you always bring up?
Oh, it's a test time. Well, I would say one, coordination between the upper body and lower body. That is always critical. And then the other thing, which I wanted to get Rick's idea on this too, what he's talking about is frequency of swimming. And I really am a strong advocate for swimming often, even for a triathlete, but maybe not swimming long because of a time issue. And Rick, what are you, when you talk about frequency, what type of frequency do you like to see triathletes try to put in?
Well, last year when I started working with some of the triathletes, and they were coming from the Northwest area down down to Henderson to train, and I'm thinking, Jesus, a long trip, and they invest a lot of time in doing this and that. Maybe they should swim longer, fewer days. And so instead of going, say, 3 days at 3,000 yards, go 2 days and go 4,500. Well, we found that they made more, or I found that they made a lot more progress with that. And because they were going so far, when you're going to swim 1.2 miles in a half Ironman, if you're going 4,000 or 4,500 yards, at least a couple of days a week, the 2150 distance of a half Ironman is no longer intimidating. You might even be doubling that every time you get in the water. Now there is the point of feel, and getting the feel for the water is important as well. So you might, but you should go at least 1 day a week longer, just like you do on your bike, where you go 1 day a week longer, or on your run 1 day a week longer. But the other thing that we figured out is that if you swim 2 days a week at 4,500, that's more time efficient than 3 days a week at 3,000 from a total time basis, because it takes you time to get to the pool and it takes you time to get home. And if you can, if you can eliminate one of those by swimming only 2 days a week instead of 3, and end up doing the same amount of yardage, that ends up being more time efficient. Now, if you're going to go 4,500 and you swim 3,000 an hour, that means that you're going to be swimming for an hour and a half. You might not have an hour and a half, in order to swim. And so a lot of this is predicated on your, you might have 3 hours, go 3,000 an hour. You might have 3 hours, getting to the pool, and have 3 hours to swim during the week, but you don't have an hour and a half. So in that case, you're better off to do the 3,000. It becomes real individual on what you can tackle. The trouble with 2 days a week at 4,500 is that you can't miss a day, because then you're only down to 1 day during the week, and that's not enough. So
I love that answer, because we're adults, we have jobs, we have families.
That's right.
It's not like in college where you're swimming, and that's part of your college experience, or even high school.
Right. Well, and that's why I say that, when the people that swim with me, I tell them, you come as often or as little as you like. I'll tell you what I think that you ought to do. But I know, you all have jobs and that, and you just, we swim at 9:30 in the morning, so we don't get a lot of, people who work regular jobs 5 days a week generally aren't generally there. So it's but come as little or as much as you like, swim as little or as much as you want.
Yeah.
And that's what I say, because everybody has, their own life that they have to look after. And quite frankly, that's more important than, getting to a swimming practice.
Yeah. Well,
So,
and that, I love this because again, it's time management, and a lot of us are time starved. And
right.
I'm fortunate. I live 2 miles from a pool, so I can do things differently than someone like you said who has to drive 45 minutes to a pool. Because I know
Mhm.
if I'm driving down to the lake, and then Ted, you and I have talked about this, and you're the same way. If you're driving down to the lake, you want to make that time worthwhile. You don't want to have your travel time more than your swim time.
Yeah, you don't want to go to the lake and swim 1,000 yards.
Right, right. Oh, I love it. Ted, did I get the other one right?
No, you got them both wrong, but that's okay. Um, you always, actually, I'll get back to that, but I want to follow up with Rick on this one. And
Okay.
one of the things I love about our podcast is we have there's conversation here.
Okay.
And so my thought on this is a little bit different, because if I'm training for a half Ironman that is 1.2 miles
Mhm.
in swimming, if
Mhm.
I swim 2,000, I'm doing basically what the race is. Okay. And in my thought process on this, I wouldn't run 13 miles 4 or 5 days a week or 3 days a week, or I might maybe I'll do it one day a week. And 56 miles on the bike, I might only do once a week. And so I don't understand, I guess, why swimmers, and not even swimmers, but swimmers in triathlon do so much more yardage as a percentage of the race compared to when they run and when they cycle.
And I think that comes down to the bike is easy. You get a bike fit and you get on the bike. And
Oh, technique is easy.
in terms
Okay,
from technique,
because I work really hard on the bike sometimes.
well, and I do too. But from a technique standpoint, the bike is easy. We're born to run, and now we get in the water. And it's just completely different. You learn to swim, and if you don't, you have this learning thing that goes on with your body as well as with your brain, that the more time you spend at something, the more that you will learn. And there is sometimes that the amount of time that you spend swimming is the low hanging fruit. Oftentimes. The trouble with that is that you need somebody to look at things in order to say, you're going off in the wrong direction here. You need to put this together. And, we started doing some filming this year and found it very helpful. I was doing things I didn't think I was doing. And I thought I was doing it right, and then I look at the films and no, that's not it. That's not as I can do this better, And other people have done the same thing. They've looked at it, and like for instance, someone said they looked at their kicks. Said, I'm kicking way too big.
Yep.
I need to make my kick smaller and hide it behind my body as I'm going through the water. And they were right.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to bring John up back on the quiz questions. So
Okay.
it's something about reducing drag and increasing power, right? Like we've talked about this many times. Like that's the basis of swimming is like,
Oh, yeah.
you've got to decrease your drag or your resistance and increase your propulsion. If you do those two things, you'll be a faster swimmer, period.
Mhm.
Right.
And if you can do them both, you'll be an exponentially faster swimmer.
Right.
So, and Rick, obviously you were dancing around that the entire time. Like, don't get me wrong. I just wanted to
Right.
put Tom on the spot and see if you could remember.
Well,
when
and
he talked about this.
I'll throw in, Rick's always good at identifying that water is 800 times more dense than air. And our drag force that we deal with on the bike, it's the same drag force in terms of resistance and in terms of propulsion that we have in the water. It's just that the water is so much more dense. So any, I'll say, error in swim technique can end up having a really dramatic effect
It's
on the
magnified.
swim performance, as opposed to if you make a little error on your bike or on
Right,
a run, even it's not that big of a deal. But
right.
on the swim, it can be it can send your hips going one way and your head going another way, and it can really wreak havoc.
Well, I love
Mhm.
the fact that you brought that up, John, because if you think about it, when we're on the bike or when we're preparing our bike, right? When we're buying our bike, oh, it's aero, it's aero, it's aero, aero helmet, aero wheels, aero frame, aero position, got to go to the wind tunnel, do testing. In really what you're saying is in swimming, it's more important, right? Like finding that position, it's not aero anymore, it's hydro, right?
Hmm.
Mhm.
But the position is way more important in the water than it is even on the bike. If you think about like you're exactly right, the density of water. So with going back to Rick, so Rick, we talked about position. Are there other things that you think can make us more hydrodynamic?
Well, one of the things, and this is theoretical. It's proven in boats that go through the water, like sailboats that go through the water. There are some sailboats that, they have so much sail area and they're designed to plane on top of the water. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about those that go through the water, and kayaks go through the water. And that's hull speed, the concept of hull speed. And some people say hull speed doesn't exist. But the concept of hull speed is definitely there. And that is that the longer the hull length, the faster the hull speed. So a 22-foot kayak that weighs the same amount as an 18-foot kayak, if you start getting into weight differentials, then it becomes a little more problematic. But if they're the same weight, a 22-foot kayak is faster than an 18-foot kayak. And so, and their hull speed is, the 22-foot kayak, the hull speed is a little bit higher. The best way to explain hull speed is if you have a sailboat and you're under hull speed, if you increase the sail area, which means you increase the power a little bit, if you increase the sail area a little bit, you'll get a nice jump in speed. Once you get to hull speed, it takes huge amounts of sail area to go fractionally faster.
Mm.
So you want to have a longer hull speed, and this even happens below hull speed. So you want to have a longer hull length, because a hull length, like I said, the 22-footer has more hull speed than the 18-footer. So you want to have a longer hull length. Now the hull length goes from in the swimmer, again, theoretical. The hull length goes from the tip of whatever's farthest forward until back to the tip of your toes. And so if you have a hand out in front of your head, that lengthens your hull speed versus from your head to the tip of your head. That gives you a little bit more length and lengthens your hull speed. You slide through the water a little bit better. And so if you look at really good swimmers in especially in the distance events, there is an overlap of the arms in front, where you will have one hand in the water and it won't get past the head when it's pulling, and the other hand is now in the water. So you get this overlap in front, and it's especially prominent in the distance swimmers, but you'll see it even in the 100-meter freestylers sometimes. The faster you go, the more the amount of power that you have makes a difference. So you don't see this in the 50 freestylers.
Right.
They go like crazy. But they do have great feel for the water. And if you, I don't know if you guys have met or have seen Kasha Wasik at UNLV there. She's the 50-meter freestyler who was second in the world in the 50-meter free in both short course and long course in 2022, was fifth in the Olympics, has gone to 4 Olympics. She's looking forward to going to her 5th Olympics now in Paris. She's a Polish national, so she swims for Poland, and she's like a 24-1 50-meter freestyler, and which is really fast. And but when you see her swim, every once in a while she'll show up at the multi-gen. When you see her swim in the pool, you know, the heels, hips, head, it's just perfect right there. She's got that nice front quadrant overlap. But when you see her race, the 50 free, there's hardly any overlap at all. There's no overlap. She's just going as fast as she can go, because it's the amount of power that you can apply. You know, you can take a the old saying is, you can take a kitchen table, flip it over, and put an outboard motor on it with enough power, and you can get it go fast, you know. So in the 50 free, it's all about power.
So is the take home here is that for triathlon, so we're not talking about pure power, we're talking about increasing hull speed, trying to increase hull speed, that
Right.
more catch-up type stroke is probably more efficient for us than the I guess, I don't know, you call it the windmill, or like where, you know,
Windmill's not a bad description.
you go, yeah, or it just keeps arm after arm after arm.
Yeah,
It's something that I've been working on, is trying to keep that, you know, more of a catch-up stroke. And when I do, and I really concentrate on it, I do go faster. And I assume it's hull speed that is what's happening here. It might be a little bit of hydrodynamics as the way my hand is as well. But
yeah, if you get your hand out there right, that it actually helps you align yourself towards the surface, and you're spearing through the water as opposed to more of a blunt instrument. And some of the good coaches talk about hiding behind your hand.
Yeah.
You know, where your body is kind of hiding behind your hand.
It's kind of like splitting the water a little bit, right?
I'm not sure how you can hide behind your hand very well, but I know for sure that your shoulders and your chest, you can hide your hips and your feet behind that for sure.
Okay, awesome. I think we've got a lot already, but let's do this. We have some video.
Okay.
So we're gonna, John's gonna play the video, and I know this is an audio podcast, so we'll try and talk through as much of it as we can. If you want, this is also going to be available on YouTube and obviously on the Tri Club's Facebook page.
Okay.
But we do have some video that we wanted to play, and we're going to go through some of it with you. So, John, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go, and I think it's good to recognize the value of doing video, because it's often hard for us to envision what we're doing while we're swimming. You know, when you're running, you can look in, you know, windows or reflections, what have you, and same thing with biking. But swimming, you really need to, I think, get some visual feedback on yourself swimming. And so, fortunately, nowadays, it's easier to get underwater camera. Back when Rick, you were coaching or swimming, and same with me, you know, trying to get underwater video was really a prime dollar type of task. But nowadays,
when I was in college, we filmed once a year in the fall, and that was it.
Yeah. We have periscopes and underwater windows and all that, and it was always an effort to do it. But now it's pretty easy to get it, and getting this visual feedback is really great. The other thing from coaching, it's great to do this, but the trick is, and I think we'll get to this probably as we start when we get to the end of this episode, is trying to figure out how to communicate to the athlete which aspects to look at, because as we already talked about, every error is magnified in the water, and it's easy to get paralyzed thinking about all the errors that we may be making when we're swimming.
Yeah.
All right, so with that sort of overview, here's the first swimmer I want you to talk about, and see if you recognize this swimmer.
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah.
And can you there's is there a deal you have to slow it down?
Yeah, I can slow it down.
Yeah, that would be better. People, I think, will see we'll see things
And
much better.
teachers, we haven't talked about the wetsuit yet, but this is, I think, brilliant that you swim in the wetsuit, and you're doing this very purposely because the majority of your races are in wetsuits, and we know that we've done research in this area that you swim differently when you're in the wetsuit versus not in the wetsuit. All right,
Right,
it's
right. And actually it's made the question of, oh, some people have several wetsuits and, what wetsuit do I wear?
mhm,
Well, by the time you get to race day, if you've been swimming in the water okay, this is me coming in here closest to and you'll see that as I would, with both hands, when I put them in, I'm kind of stretching out and depressing with an almost straight arm. And I need to catch my hand up to my elbow more or shove my elbow forward more when I swim in order to engage with my forearm as well. And that was the big thing that I took out of that. The good thing is that I am right there on the surface of the water. The lane line is the thing that is parallel with the surface, so you can truly measure how close to the surface, how parallel to. And if you look at that line, okay, I'm turning to the right, and if you drew a line underneath my body, that line is roughly parallel to the surface.
mhm.
That's what you want. The hand is a little bit lower than the elbow a little bit lower than the shoulder. I'm starting to depress already. I might want to leave that out there and let it stay out there straighter longer. But you see here that my if you take the lowest part, my right side there is turned down. And that is roughly parallel to that lane line that we see in the foreground, and that's what you want.
Mhm.
You
And
don't want to be hanging down. So
and certainly you've got a good swim stroke, period. But even with the wetsuit, it really does help sort of magnify that part. But
yeah,
that I think if we had a video of you swimming without the wetsuit, you'd probably be pretty close to this as well. So that's pretty neat.
well, the other thing is that when you swim like this and you're thinking about it all the time, when you take the wetsuit off, you feel like you want to pull your hips and your legs up right at the surface all the
Mhm.
time as well. So I think the problem comes when people who don't do that is that they aren't thinking. It's automatic with the wetsuit. When they take the wetsuit off, they think it'll be automatic, but this is swimming. Nothing is automatic, and you have to learn to do it. And actually, one of the things that I do a couple of days a week is I do back planks to strengthen my whole back chain, my glutes, my hamstrings, the paraspinous muscles, to strengthen all that, so that it's very easy for me to hold that up at the surface.
Mhm.
There are a few people, particularly if you are there are a few people, especially females, because they carry more fat, so they float a little bit better. It's in the right place. It's in the hips, particularly if they're carrying a little bit of additional weight. It's for some of those people, it's very easy to be right up at the surface, exactly where they belong.
Mhm.
And of course, that comes back and bites them when they start biking up hills and when they start running, because that hurts them, and it hurts them more biking and running than it does swimming.
Well, what I liked is, you looked at this video and right away you're already looking for things you can do. And I think it's worth saying that, you're an hour and a half, or excuse me, hour and five type of Ironman swimmer.
Yeah.
Right. And so,
Oh well, I was. I was an hour and 60. I was an hour and 6 minutes in Kona for
yeah,
years.
yeah,
I'm probably closer to 110 now. I was
okay.
111 in Tulsa. But I race as
And
a
just so people
72-year-old.
know, how old are you?
72.
'72.
I'm 71 out, but I race as a 72-year-old. My birthday is in November, so.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. But I think, having a critical eye and looking at things that you can improve is something that you're always doing, and that's great. So you want to look at the next swimmer?
Okay,
All right, I'll just play it through.
now see that my kick isn't very big either. So I'm hiding my feet mostly behind. Okay, you want this one, the one in the foreground there?
Yep.
Okay. All right, she said that I could use her name. So this is Candace.
Okay.
We did a video prior to this, and her kick was even bigger than this.
Mm.
And the first thing that she said, she's picking up on this very quickly. The first thing that she said was, I got to make my kick smaller. I didn't even have to say it to her. She could see that, her legs and her feet were getting in the way. This is much better. She's pretty much hiding behind her body there. She does a nice job. Okay, stop it in there, can you? Now, when the go ahead and run it when she extends way out in front at one point. Okay, so now you can see about where the lane line is. You can see where where the lower part of her body line is. It's roughly parallel. With this arm, she had a tendency, it was real bad when she started here about a year and a half ago. She has a tendency to dolphin her hand up towards the surface. It was so bad when she started, she was actually like saying, stop. She had her hand like this and was stopping herself and didn't realize that she was doing it.
Right.
She has, this is better now. We actually did some filming again today, and we want to look at that and get that. But I'm sure it's better than this. Okay, kind of go through a portion of the stroke with her. Okay, so let's do the arm closest to us. I think we can see that better.
Nope, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, I'd like to point out how her catch is not quite as good as it should be.
What would you like to see?
I'd like to see with her fingertips down at about 45 degrees pointing at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
As she goes through the stroke.
Yeah, and something that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And she's
A little bit more.
a little bit more.
Yeah. Right there. Okay, now she's kind of just pressed with a straight hand. If you draw a line between her fingertips and her shoulder, her elbow is actually leading. Her elbow's going first. And you want the elbow on the other side of that line between fingertips and shoulder. So, and if she did that, that would give her a better presentation of both her hand and her forearm to push the water back towards her feet.
Mm-hmm.
So Rick, is part of the reason, just looking at this, is part of the reason she's got such a wide kick here because of that hand position out there, and she's counterbalancing with the opposite leg? What do you think?
Yeah, but that's certainly, I would not say that that's impossible. That's certainly a possibility.
It's something I've noticed with people when they get that wide hand, they have to counterbalance with the opposite.
Yeah,
foot.
and it happens more on the when they breathe than when they don't.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like they're trying to grab some additional balance by getting this wider hand in. Okay, now there you go. That's nice overlap. She's got a nice front quadrant. Both hands are out. She's got a hand in front of her head all the time, as far as the length is concerned.
So Rick, the other thing I'm seeing with her and
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, is right, her head's good there, but now
Yeah.
she's over rotating a little bit there, but then her head goes back all the way under the water.
Yeah, and if you look at some of those really good swimmers, that
Look how deep
actually
it is. It's going like an inch and a half under the water.
that actually look at a film of Jason Lezak.
Yeah.
And he was the guy that swam the phenomenal relay leg that enabled Phelps to get his 8th gold medal. They thought the French were going to beat him, and Lezak beat which was the fastest swimmer in the world, a French swimmer. He beat him to the wall. And Lezak does the same thing, where he like comes up to breathe, and then it's almost like he's up to breathe and then he's back down, and up to breathe and then he's back down. And then his head is completely underwater. So that's not necessarily bad, particularly if it helps you keep alignment.
Right. So the only question why I was asking is because you'd mentioned, keeping your head, hip, and heels out of the water, and the Lezak, we've all seen that swim and seen him swim, but obviously that's a different thing than someone trying to swim an Ironman distance, right? There's a lot of energy that could potentially be utilized by moving your head down, moving your head up, moving your head down, moving your head up. And what are your thoughts on that?
With some guys, they're so strong and have so much muscle and so little fat, particularly men, that they have a very hard time staying on top of the water.
Right.
So with them, it might be necessary in order to get their highest speed. But on this view that you have right there, you have the head breaking the surface. You see that right hip just breaking the surface, and let's see here. I got, and that heel is up there too.
Yeah.
You got one heel up there too.
Well, she's got all 3 points there for sure. Right.
And Candace is a pretty good, Candace is a decent floater naturally. And that's the first thing that I look for is body position. And she had that naturally. I think one of the problems with generating power is that most people don't have good rotational strength to where that, that the humerus rotates to pull.
Yeah.
And most people don't have good rotational strength or have the balance to have that muscular balance to have good rotate. They can pull their arm down and they're very strong in pull downs like that, but they have to lead with their elbow. They don't have good rotational strength. And so that's one of the things that weights can, and you can get that through swimming, but it takes a long time. And we swim, as triathletes, we swim limited amounts of yards compared to, swimmers. So that's one of the things that weights can help quite a bit because it can strengthen that rotational ability on both arms.
I always like to have people try to do that in front of a mirror, not head first into a mirror, but going vertical in the mirror and practicing it, because if you can't see and do it in air, you're not going to be able to do it in the water. And so it really this is the value of video, but then also doing some dry land work and just trying that technique of rotating the humerus is it takes a little bit of practice to really get that coordination down.
Well, and that brings up a really good point, John, is that you can do it slower with the weights.
Yeah.
So you make sure that it is right before you try to speed that up. Yeah. And you're not going to drown. When you're swimming, you have to be able to breathe. And if you can't breathe, that's the first thing that you're going to do. And if that means that you don't quite see your arm pole quite as well, then that's what it is. And like I'm a right side breather. I don't see my left arm very much. Whereas with the weights, you know, I can do it slow, I can do it right, I can make sure that, you know, I can make sure that there's good resistance on there. I can make sure I'm working my lats, which are the strongest muscles in swimming. So those are the, you know, the biggest ones. Those are the ones you want to work. So I can make sure that I'm working that. I can make sure that my hand and my forearm are parallel to the floor. I pull straight. I got mine screwed into a rafter in the garage, my weight. And so I pull on my cable, you know, I can make sure that my forearm and hand are parallel to the garage floor as far as I can get it, so I can get it as efficient a pull as possible for as long as possible.
Good, good. All right, we have about 10 minutes, so we'll jump to the next swimmer.
Okay.
Let's see if it's,
Let's go to the one to point out will be the one probably that comes in next, and that would be, no, that's me. Far away. Oh, right there, far away. Okay. All right. Oh, yeah, okay. That's a good image. That's a good image. All right. You can see here that instead of being parallel to the lane line, her body is angled down at what, 20 degrees, you know, 15 or 20 degrees. That's a huge amount of drag compared to being right up at the surface. And so it's just not as efficient. Now, if you can catch one of the arm pulls, like probably the one that, yeah, probably that one right there, and get it like partly a little bit farther back.
oh, back. Okay.
There. Oh,
This video player is not that great. Let me go back.
okay, okay. Okay, so now she's depressing with her arm straight. You can see if you drew from her shoulder to her hand, that her elbow is leading, and that's not what you want. You want the elbow on the other side of the hand. So at this point, her hand and her forearm should be lined up and should be, if not vertical, near vertical. And that would give her a lot more surface area to pull. And we've discovered with this swimmer is that when she puts on paddles, she's a lot faster. So if we can get her to be able, and I think that it's a rotational weakness, but if we can get her to get her rotational strength up so that she can apply more surface area with her forearm, that I think that she can get nice jumps in speed by doing that. Now, that said, the other thing that we got to be working on, and probably the first thing we got to be working on, is getting that angle, eliminating that angle, getting her parallel to the lane lines there where she's right up at the surface. Now her feet kick too big. When she kicks down, you can see that see how her leg is all in the way there, as far as being parallel to the lane line. So, and she's swimming better than that now. This was, and this brings us to another point. If you swim to, you know, the end of October and say, well, okay, my races are done, I'm not going to do anything, and you take November off and December off because, well, it's there's Christmas coming, and then, you know, well, I got to kind of recover in January, and geez, oh Pete, you know, if I don't do something February 1st, it's time to get back in the water. The trouble with that is that you will revert back to whatever genetics you had, whatever habits you had when you started. It takes huge amounts of volume to overcome that. And if you're not going to be training your arms, you're not going, you're going to lose some of the, if you gain rotational strength, which is probably one of the most important things as far as strength is concerned. If you gain that rotational strength, if you are not doing some strength training, you're going to lose it. And as you get older, it's, instead of going downhill on a slope, it's like jumping off of a cliff. And then it takes an inordinately high amount of time to get back to where you were, if you can. At some point, it becomes, almost impossible to get back there. So you need to be doing something all the time. Okay, yeah, if you want to take a couple of weeks completely off, fine. And if you want to reduce your training, fine. But training needs to be a part of your life. It's the best thing that we know to combat aging. It is, it will get you back to, race. You'll be back to race conditions sooner. You won't deteriorate so much. You should be doing something all the time. Taking 3 months off is a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to add something here. And I love this whole line of where you're going with this. So there was some research done, this is several years ago now, and my number, because it's been several years since I read it, but my numbers are a little bit off. And I think they took people, it was men between 75, I think, and 80. And the theory was that you couldn't basically have them gain strength, right? It's really hard. And they put these people, they were doing 3 times a week strength training. And it was quite solid strength training.
Right.
And they did it for 2 years straight.
Yeah.
And in 2 years, they gained 10%. And it was a kind of a groundbreaking thing that we actually could gain strength in that decade, right?
Right.
Well, what ended up happening is after 2 years, they took a group of them and they gave them bed rest. And in 2 weeks of bed rest, they lost 25% of their strength.
Yes.
It took 2 years to gain 10%, 2 weeks to lose 25%. So what you're saying is 100% true. And it gets exponentially worse with each year, or sorry, probably exponentially each decade, but it gets worse each year.
Yes.
And so you are absolutely correct. And so the people that for example, that I coach, I really try and convince them not to take an off season. Yes, we can go take a break.
Reduce the amount of work you're doing, fine.
Yeah,
don't do zero.
Don't do zero. Yeah, unless you've kind of overextended to a point where it's like, actually we need a week off, but it'll be a week. It won't be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. I think when you're young, like you're like a 22-year-old triathlete. Okay, yeah, you can take a month off. You're gonna bounce back so quick. It doesn't make a difference.
You have a mild downhill slope and a relatively quick recovery. But as you get older, you're jumping off of a cliff.
Exactly. And so oftentimes as triathletes, we get enamored with social media and what pros are doing. And the pros are like, okay, it's my off season. I'm going to go a month off. I'm not going to touch the pool for a month. I'm not going to do this. And we see this, well, that's what I need to do. But there's very little information out there on the aging athlete. And so, the three of us together, we're all above 50, right?
Right.
And this is the reality of our situations, is that taking that time off can be devastating to us. And even Rick, during that time, let's say you swam 1 day a week, you'd be so much better off than taking the 2 months off or the 3 months.
Anything is better than nothing.
Exactly. And it gets so easy to get into the routine of, well, it's my off season. Right.
Yeah.
And, I'm a huge advocate for swimming, especially swimming year round. I'm a huge advocate for everything year round, but especially swimming year round, because like you said, it's such a technical sport and you will revert back. You'll lose your strength and you'll revert back in the motor control side of things as well.
Yes.
And so, I once again, I couldn't agree with you more. And if people take nothing away from tonight, I hope they took a lot away from it. It's really, that is such an important thing. And with that being said, I think that's a good spot for us to end because it's so poignant. So Rick, thank you so much for your time. John, thank you so much for handling the video. We got to get a better video player, but you did the best you could. But that was great. And then also thanks to the people that agreed to let us look at their video. Rick, please reach out to them and thank them for letting us look at that. Because, you know, it can be a little bit intimidating to have people like, you know, watch your video and have this on the internet and stuff like that. But
Different people react differently as far as that is concerned, and you know,
we really appreciate it. So thank you. And then, hey, just so everybody knows, Rick also took a look at my swimming, and he helped me. I'm swimming a little bit faster now, and we got me up on the top of the water a little bit more. And I do appreciate your time spending with me as well. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Rick, and thanks everyone.
Have a great weekend, both of you, and you know, try and keep cool if you can.
Yeah. I've got a long bike on Saturday that's going to be hot because I'm in the garage on the trainer, and I'll have the air conditioner blowing on me. And Sunday I got to run, and I'm gonna have to start early. I mean, early.
Yeah.
Because it's gonna get hot.
You don't want to start Friday at midnight for your Sunday run.
That's right. Yeah, be safe, everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, have a good weekend.
All right, thanks.